Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, whatever the part of the world you are tuned in from. This is Funny Like a Clown Podcast, episode 94, January 12th, 2021. As always, Funny Like a Clown Podcast brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. There is only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. Go green, go fresh, get it shipped right to your house. We do comedy here. On the phone, I have a Boston legend, comedian, writer, producer, actor, corporate and motivational speaker. He's been seen on places like the A&E channel, CBS, Comedy Central, and HBO. Joe Yannetty, welcome to the show.
Hey, hello. How you doing, buddy?
Wow, well, checking out your career, I'm in amazement here. You've accomplished quite a bit. How long have you been at comedy?
Oh my God. In a month, it'll be 38 years.
30. Wow, going on 40 years. Wow, you've seen a lot in the world, though. Well, take us back to the beginning. How did it all get started out for you? How did you get in the business?
Well, I'm sure your listeners know who Lenny Clark is.
The legend.
And Lenny's brother Mike, who ran the Ding Ho when I started, and runs Giggles now in Saugus, right? Massachusetts. And Mike was going out with a girl who worked with my sister, and I'm sorry that I said my sister, and she's calling me right now, and I turned off my call waiting. I don't know why this is going.
That's timing for you right there. She's right on cue.
So, my sister worked with this girl, and my father. I never know what part of this story to tell. My father had passed away. My sister was very upset about it, and I used to call her at work and cheer her up all the time. And she worked with Mike Clark's girlfriend. Was his girlfriend at the time. He ended up marrying her later.
Okay.
And she kept asking me, "Do you know who Lenny Clark is?" And you should go down to open mic night. And my sister and I went to a show on a Saturday night at the Ding Ho, and it was amazing. And then I went back the following week for an open mic night to see what that was like. And my brother, who, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and my brother was the toughest guy in my neighborhood.
Good protection.
And he was like, I've gotten this shit kicked out of it. Are we allowed to?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, good, yeah.
And he said, I never back down from anybody, but if you go do that, you got more balls than I ever had. So I had to do it.
So the challenge was in. That was the challenge. How'd you do your first time up there?
I did great, because I had no idea what was going on.
Right.
So Lenny gave me the most amazing introduction. It was on a Wednesday night at the Ding Ho. Lenny hosted open mic night.
Right.
And he basically asked the audience to be nice to me, because it was my first time. And
usually they are if they ask, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, that back then, Lenny was packing the club.
He was the guy, yeah.
For amateur night.
Right. Yeah. So you were hooked from there? I mean, it's an addictive hobby. Once you do it, you can't wait to do it again, right?
Well, I did it that night, and I went back the next week, and I never went more than 2 weeks. Actually, I don't think I ever went more than a week without doing a set.
Without going back, yeah.
Until I was on my honeymoon with my first wife, and that was 6 years later. No, 5 years later.
So you took a little break then when you got married, okay.
No, 7 years later. So I went 7 years without going a week, without doing a show somewhere.
So you were going at it hard then, right? Yeah, but that's what gets you ahead. You have to go hard at the business if you want to get ahead, right?
Well, when I started, I remember Mike McDonald, another great Boston comedian, said to me, "I'll give you a guest spot," because he had a show out in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he said, "I'll give you Framingham." And he said, "I'll give you a guest spot. Where's your calendar?" And I said, "Why would I need a calendar?" He's like, "How do you know where you are?" And I said, Tuesday and Wednesday at the Ding Ho, Thursday at Stitches, and Sunday I played against Sam's, which was the open mic nights at all the comedy clubs.
Oh, right.
And I had never done anything beside that. And, it's not like it is now where there's open mic nights all over the place.
Yeah, 7 nights a week you can have one, yeah. We just had Mike on the last episode. Yeah, I mean, he gave a lot of people a break. I'll tell you. I mean, he was really the guy.
Yeah, he gave me my first guest spot,
Hmm.
and I quit my job a month later.
Wow, that's going for it right there. That's bravery. Did it start paying the bills for you though? Did it work out?
Well, it was a year later,
Yeah. So.
and so I did open mics as much as I could, sometimes 2 or even 3 a night.
Right.
I was just, there was nothing in my life but comedy.
That's
I,
it.
I didn't care about anything else.
So you mentioned the
And
days at the Ding Ho. I mean, that's like the legendary time for Boston comedy. It kind of all goes back to there. What do you remember from the days at the Ding Ho? All the legends that went through. They weren't legends then, but they are now. But what do you remember?
oh, well, to me, they were, I used to drive, I was only 20 years old, and, you know, having dinner with my family, my mother, my sister, my brother, and I used to drive them insane, because I would tell them, you know what Sweeney said last night, and you know what Lenny said today, yeah.
Right.
And I would just go on and on and on about all the comics that I was watching, and, you know,
The genius you were witnessing. Yeah.
well, just the Ding Ho, Tuesday night, Jimmy Tingle hosted, and Jimmy's gone on to be a great political satirist. Wednesday night was Lenny Clark. Thursday, back then his name was DJ Hannard, but now DJ Hazard.
Right.
And Friday, I can't remember who, I think it was Don Gavin on Friday and Barry Crimmins on Saturday, or the other way around. Barry Crimmins started the Ding Ho,
Right.
and Sunday night was Sweeney. You know, those were the guys who hosted. And back then, the host was the headliner of the show.
Right.
And Crimmins used to get so mad. People would come up to him and go, you know, you were just as funny as some of these comedians.
Yeah, so you're learning from all the legends. Yeah, I heard Barry was kind of a hard ass, but I mean, he's a Boston guy. All us Boston guys, we got big mouths, so.
Well, you know, Barry was the first, that Saturday night when I went with my sister, it must have been Barry on Saturdays, because I went up to Barry, and when people say, you went up to Barry Crimmins? I was like, yeah, why? Was I not supposed to do that? Because he had this reputation of being, you know, hard on people. And
Yeah.
he was so nice to me. He couldn't have been nicer.
Right.
And,
Well, he had the
and
place to
was
run,
one of
yeah.
my biggest supporters and mentors. And
A lot of young comics want you bump Lenny Clark to put me on it. It's like you got to tell him, you know, so that's how you get the reputation of being the hard ass. He's just telling you the truth, you know.
Yeah. Oh no, he was. I guess the way I would describe Barry was he was gruff. You know, he looked like you didn't want to talk to him, but you know, he was just a soft-hearted,
had a good side to him
really
too. Yeah.
kind guy. You know.
That's good to hear. So were you? I mean, around the Ding Ho, were you around when they got the call from the Tonight Show to set up the thing that they were coming in to take a look at those guys, or?
No, I started just after that. Like it might have been as much as a year.
Right.
So Stephen Wright, when I started, Stephen Wright had already been on the Tonight Show.
So he had already hit a big time, right?
And then a guy named Teddy Bergeron did it shortly after that. I don't know if you know Teddy.
Teddy, yeah, I know Teddy on the scene, yeah.
Yeah, Teddy. I had been doing. I watched Teddy on the Tonight. Teddy got paneled his first Tonight Show,
Oh.
and a week later, he came into the Ding Ho, just shit-faced, and Tingle wouldn't put him on open mic night. And I'm like, this guy got paneled on the Tonight Show last week, and Tingle won't put him on open mic night because I mean he would have. He was really.
He was lit, yeah. Well,
yeah, Teddy's he was a really bad alcoholic, but a lovely guy. I love Teddy, and Teddy, you know, he had his problems. We all have problems, but Teddy, I can honestly say, is one of the best comedians I've ever seen in my life.
right, he has a good reputation on the Boston scene, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it all seemed to work out for you from the Ding Ho. You performed in places like Radio City Music Hall in New York, the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., Caesar's Palace in Vegas. What's it like playing all those legendary venues for you?
Oh, those were amazing. I did those. I was opening for Rosie O'Donnell, and we did Radio City Music Hall on New Year's Eve. That was a huge thrill. You know, they had all the animals downstairs from what's the show they did, like the Nativity. you know, they had all the camels and the sheep and everything, and
Oh, yeah,
for
Vegas. Oh,
for
something
the
going on in
Christmas
Vegas. Well,
show,
yeah.
and that was really cool, and just the way that theater is designed and the history that goes with it, and but honestly, I mean, aside from like being on stage there and you know come out and take a bow with her at the end of the show,
Yeah.
standing ovation, and aside from that, the biggest thrill was Madeline Kahn came backstage. And
Oh,
I loved meeting Madeline Kahn. I think she was amazing. And she was also from Revere, Massachusetts, which is
right.
right near where I grew up.
That's the fun part, meeting some of your childhood heroes, definitely, yeah. So,
Yeah. And some, like working at Caesar's Palace with her, uh, it was a big industry night. And I used to do this character in my act called Uncle Cheesy.
right.
and, and I needed a stool. And the backstage guy said, well, whose stool do you want to use? I said, what do you mean, whose stool? He goes, which stool do you want? You want Frank Sinatra's stool, George Burns' I go, come on, man, I need a
You're gonna
stool.
choose, right? Yeah.
And I didn't believe him. And he goes, come with me. And he takes me in this area backstage. And there's all kinds of props labeled with like the biggest stars in the world.
Really? Wow.
Different size stools with people's names
Yeah,
on
yeah.
them. And I used George Burns' stool.
So how do you keep it cool? I mean, is there a method you use to keep in calm in a situation? I mean, I'd be shitting myself if I was, Radio City Music Hall and all these, famous people before me. I mean, what do you do to stay calm in a situation like that?
I don't. I mean, I get nervous before every show.
Right, yeah.
I really do. I get. It's not like a fear. It's more like anxiousness. Like can't wait to get this started. And hoping it goes well.
Right.
And that's. I mean, doing the Boston Garden about 6 years ago. We did the 20th anniversary of Comics Come Home, and it's a big cancer fundraiser.
Right, it's the biggest comedy event in Boston, yeah.
Yeah, I had just survived stage 4 throat cancer.
Right, so, which should be a sad story, but I mean, you beat it in I think it was in July you were close to death, and then in November you were performing at the Garden for 16,000 people, so what did you use to get through that?
Well, that's the only place that I've ever been. I mean, my voice wasn't back. My voice wasn't back exactly to
right where it was, right
to perfect. So there were certain things that, like certain words that when I said them, they sounded kind of weird. So I was that close to finishing my treatments,
Yeah.
And I'm backstage, and I just peeked through the curtain, and the chatter before the show started was louder than any applause I had ever heard before.
Right, so many people in the garden.
So many people talking, and and I've never felt that. I've never looked out at an audience and gotten nervous.
Yeah, right. You could feel them just there on your skin, right? But
and all I was thinking was, okay, where did I go wrong? Was it a mistake to accept this gig?
Yeah, right, right.
Was it just a mistake to look through the curtain?
So don't look at what you're walking into, right? But I mean, if somebody out there, we've all dealt with, people, our loved ones who have diseases or something. But I mean, what did you use? Did you use humor to get through that time in your life to get better, or how did you stay positive?
Yeah, I through the whole thing, I never lost my sense of humor, and I honestly didn't know how bad it was. I've toyed with the idea of writing a book.
Yeah.
And I interviewed the nurse that took care of me, and I said, how bad was I? And she said, aside from death, worst case scenario. So I never knew that it was that bad.
Yeah, really. I had a girlfriend. She had cancer, and she went through the chemo, and she said she could never do it again. It was that bad for her. I mean, hats off to you. But I mean, now you're a motivational speaker out of that. I mean, is that what inspired you to do some motivational speaking? Was getting through that?
Yeah, well, now with COVID and all this stuff that's going on, I'm not doing anything.
Nobody's doing nothing, but I mean, back when you could
Uh,
do it, what I mean,
yeah, well, I just, it's, if I've had so many people tell me that I should do things like that. You know, I had a psychiatrist when I was really sick, and
yeah,
because I went to Dana-Farber, and they're the best,
the
man. And
best, right? Best of the best,
they're,
yeah.
they're like, "This is your psychiatrist." I'm like, I don't need a psychiatrist. They're like, "Yeah, you will."
Yeah, right.
So,
You don't know
and
what's in store
she
for you,
told
right?
me that, yeah, she told me I should write a book, just because of the way I could describe what I was going through and how it felt. But I don't know. It's really difficult to
Yeah, but I mean, you
to
being through it, you
decide,
can
like, do
help
I
someone
want
who
to
hasn't been
embrace
through
this
it
or
yet.
do I want to forget about it? You know.
Right. So what would you tell somebody right now? So, I mean, if, you know, one of your loved one came up to you right now and said, hey, I've been diagnosed with cancer, you've been through it, well, what do I got to do to get through it? What would you tell them?
Well, the thing is, it depends a lot on which cancer. Like, I had throat cancer, and I guess head and neck cancers are really the worst because you can't eat. So if it was someone who had the exact thing that I have, my number one thing of advice would be to make sure you get a feeding tube, because with the feeding tube, because it's almost impossible to eat
Right.
and to swallow, because they're literally lighting your throat on fire every day, you know,
Yeah.
with the radiation. And uh, the feeding tube helped a lot, you know. And people who don't get it, sometimes they don't make it because they can't maintain their weight, nutrition, and
Right.
so. But any other kind, all kinds of cancer, the number one most important thing is your attitude.
Right.
You got to believe that you're going to win. You got to believe that you're going to make it.
Yeah.
And there's so many advances out there now that, you know, it's not a death sentence anymore. And just don't, like, my brother passed away a week ago. Tomorrow will be a week.
Yeah.
And you know, they gave him a year to live, and he lived more than 2 years.
Sure. There's no
And
expiration date on you. It's up to you. You know what you want to do, right?
well, my brother Dave, he said they gave me a year to live. They just didn't tell me what year.
There you go. Beat the odds. So, I mean, were you a smoker? Did you smoke cigarettes and stuff when you were young?
No, I got my cancer from HPV.
Oh.
So I did smoke when I was younger, but not that much.
Right. That
But
okay.
the human papillomavirus, I don't know if you're familiar with what causes that.
No, I'm not familiar with it. No.
Well, it's oral to genital contact with a woman.
Aha. Michael
Yeah,
Douglas
so,
had that, I believe, that problem, right? Yeah.
you know, some people, you know, a lot of people when they get cancer from cigarettes, it's an easy call to give up what caused you cancer.
Right.
You know, some people, it's a little more difficult than that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. All right. So let's get back to comedy here. You know, you started doing some TV shows like Caroline's Comedy Hour and Evening at the Improv. How did you land those gigs? Were you getting noticed, or did you get an agent, or how did you get into stuff like that?
Well, I had moved to Los Angeles in 1986, 87. And when I got out there, I just, you know, I got into all the clubs. I had a manager that was helping me a little, got me into a lot of the clubs and showcasing. But then there was just this boom of, like, Evening at the Improv and Comedy on the Road, and you know, there was stuff on A&E and Showtime and HBO, and it was a really fun time. And I think I did about 40 of those. I think I did like 40 TV appearances, something like that.
Now, did they just call you in, or did you have to compete with other comics to get on there, or?
Well, there would be like a showcase at the clubs in Los Angeles.
Right.
And, you know, if you were in at that club and they put you on the showcase, and I was working the road a lot. You know, I was making more money than anyone I knew growing up. You know, just and traveling around the country doing what I love to do. So I didn't want to stay in Los Angeles and you know, a lot of guys stayed there and they
Yeah.
wanted a sitcom or they wanted the Tonight Show.
Get the big break, right?
Yeah, and you develop a really short amount of material. But I wanted to travel around. I wanted to see these places. I wanted to experience things. I wanted to have stuff to write about.
Did you enjoy it? Because a lot of the veteran comics tell me they don't like living out of a suitcase. They couldn't stand the road. So you actually enjoyed the road then?
Oh man, are you kidding me? I was always the youngest guy on the show and the headliner for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was such an adventure to travel, to have someone pay me to go around the country and be in all these cool places and meet people from different parts of the country. And then after, you know, I left Los Angeles and came back, and I went back again. I made this movie called Suckers, and then I came home again. I started working cruise ships, and I was traveling all over the world. I mean,
You're getting paid vacations, yeah. That's
oh man, and you know, if I could compare myself to maybe 1% of my friends,
yeah.
you know, people like Billy Gardell and, you know, Ray Romano, Seinfeld,
Yeah.
Tim Allen, I could compare myself to those very few people and feel horrible for the rest of my life.
Yeah, living the
Or
dream.
I could compare myself to everyone else in the world and say, okay, I made a decent living. I was doing something that was the most fun I've ever had.
Right.
And I mean, there were times I like literally went around the world. Like,
Getting paid to have fun. Getting paid to have fun and travel, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever get homesick though? Where you did? I mean, at some point you got to miss your family and stuff back home, right?
Oh yeah, it was really hard. I mean, there were parts of it that were. I mean, I'm on my third marriage now, so that's
that shows the toll it takes on you right there, right?
Yeah, and the weird thing is, my first marriage ended because I was home a lot more, you know,
right.
So that
you were around
we
too
kind of
much,
realized
right?
we didn't really like each other, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, well, she didn't like me.
That'll do it.
And yeah, and then my second wife was a comedian, so.
Oh, jeez.
That's you know, there's a whole bunch of different things with that, but finally I've scored and met the right one, and
finally found the one you were waiting for.
Yeah,
that's a good story.
So this one is amazing. Most amazing wife.
She's a keeper. That's a good one.
And you know, I was working cruise ships, and she'd come with me a couple of times a year, 3 times a year, and you know, always on New Year's Eve, and
that's a vacation for her too. Yeah.
In the world. What's that?
That's a vacation for her too. If she goes with you on the cruises, right?
Oh yeah, man. My wife loved doing that with me. But then you know, it got kind of old after a while.
Yeah, anything does. Yeah.
Oh man, I'd cut off my arm to be able to do it right now, though.
Yeah, I know. Any kind of performing right now would be good. But you mentioned the movie Suckers, which won a Best Screenwriters Award. But what made you do that?
Well, when my first wife and I decided to have a baby, and she got pregnant, I didn't want to miss anything, so I went and got a job selling cars in Los Angeles just to make a living and to stay there.
Right.
And I ended up, I wrote a one-man show. I have a writing partner out there. He read my one-man show, and he's like, we could make this into a movie. So we rewrote it and ended up getting financing for it, made the movie, and just recently, my partner remastered the whole film. He directed and edited too.
Oh.
He remastered the whole film, and it's released now. You can get it on, you know, you go to my website, Yannetty.com. There's links to Roger Nygaard, he's my co-writer and director and editor.
Right.
You go on his website. I think it's on, I know it's on Amazon. I'm not sure if it's anywhere else, but you can get it on Vimeo, and or you can buy it from me. I'll sign it and send it to you.
There you go. You can Google it and find out where to buy it. But I mean, that was what you're best known for, was the movie Suckers. But you did more. The Truth About Marriage, Finding the Funny, and what's the truth about marriage? Let us know.
Well, my partner that made Suckers with me, he's also a documentarian. He's made a documentary about Trekkies. He actually made 2 Trekkies
Yeah.
and Trekkies 2. And that's a documentary about marriage. And it's a really good documentary about relationships and, you know, who's the boss and what are the problems and why would you want to be in a relationship. So, I mean, that's a really great documentary.
If you're single,
And,
you want to be in a relationship, and if you're in a relationship, you want to be single. You're never happy. We're guys. We're never happy, right? So whatever you do, you know, what are you going to do? But, yeah, then, I mean, you know, you did the traveling around the standing still, then you decided to sail the seven seas. What made you get into the cruise ship industry?
Well, it was actually the IRS, because I had some problems with the IRS many years ago. And, you know, they put a hold on everything and took all my money out of my bank. And,
Oh, boy.
And then, consequently, someone asked, you know, do you want to go? I was resisting doing cruises.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I can go do this. They'll pay me. I'll be able to pay off the IRS, settle that. And I did. So
you work for what? Royal Caribbean, Carnival Cruise, Holland American? Well, what kind of life is it doing comedy on cruise ships? I mean, how long are you on the ship, or how does it all work?
Well, when I first started, then they don't really know you. It's just a week-to-week kind of thing. And then I got in really good with one cruise line. So at one point, I was living on a ship that didn't go anywhere except Hawaii. And that was heaven.
Yeah, regular in Hawaii, why not?
Oh, man, that's my favorite place in the world. And you're always in the United States, you know. I could use my cell phone.
Right.
I could, you know, and we were doing 3 overnights. I could get off the ship at night, go to a movie, you know, stuff like that. I was in heaven. So I'd stay on that ship for months. And then when that went away, I worked other cruise lines. And at the end, I was working the 4 biggest ships in the world were the only ships I wanted to work. And I was only sailing in and out of Florida. Or I would go do them in Europe, like go to Italy and Spain and France.
You're sailing all over the place, huh?
Yeah.
So how many shows a week do you do when you're on a cruise ship? How many shows a week do you do?
Those ships, they're called Oasis class ships, the Royal Caribbean. They have actual comedy clubs on them, and we do either 2 or 3 shows a night. And so it would be anywhere, depending on what the schedule was, it would be like 14 to 16 shows a week.
Wow.
And they were really small clubs, and, you know, there's 2 comedians, so I got to work with other comedians, which is unusual for cruise work.
Right.
And, you know, we do all these shows, and you only had to do 20, 30-minute sets.
Oh, okay.
You know?
That's a lot of material, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing was, it was a comedy club. So, I mean, I can't do the same show twice. It's just the way I work. But you could do the same show every show if you wanted.
You could if you wanted to, okay.
Yeah.
Well, from what I heard, I don't know, is this chart out like you got to do like a clean set for the early crowd, then a dirty set for the night crowd? So they want you to have like 30 clean and 30 dirty for the early show and the late show? Is that true, or?
Well, certain cruise lines do that.
Okay.
Royal Caribbean, if you were doing a show in the theater, if it was labeled a family show, you had to work clean. And it was usually you had to do that at the most 2 shows that week, but usually just 1. They had 1 family show in the theater where people could bring their kids if they wanted to. But all the rest of the shows, you could do anything you want. Carnival every night. The early show was a clean show. The late show was a dirty show.
Right.
And Carnival, they made you feel guilty if you weren't filthy enough, you know?
Really?
Yeah. So
usually it's the other way around. They want you to be crystal clean. They want you to be dirty, huh?
Yeah, well, you had to be really clean to the family shows. And there was really no holds barred on the late shows.
All
and
right.
Carnival was probably the closest atmosphere you could get to a regular club on land.
Right.
You know,
that's a giant ship. That's like a little city on water, pretty much, right?
Oh man, the Oasis business class ships on Royal Caribbean, 6,500 passengers, 2,000 crew.
Wow. That's like a city on water, like I just said. Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah. So
It was bigger than some towns.
yeah, right.
You know,
Anything you do, yeah, huh?
And it was so much fun. I had so much fun doing that.
Those are the memories, 40 years worth of memories.
Come home and stay home. You know, I did it for many, many years.
Yeah. And you love to get back to it, but well, you mentioned Rosie O'Donnell. Now you've written and toured with Rosie O'Donnell, so tell us something about Rosie we wouldn't know.
She's wonderful, Rosie. She treated me really well. She did fire me though.
Okay.
She hired me as a writer on her TV show, and she had a head writer that I had a bit of a disagreement with, and she fired me, which it was fine. I love being a comedian, and she hired me as a writer, and it's just not, you know, I'm not cut out to go to an office every day and do a job.
Yeah, you're more of a road guy, right?
No.
Huh. Now, does she hate Trump as much as she lets on, or is that like a stage thing?
Oh, no, I'm sure she hates him.
She hates him. All right, well, so she's true to who she is, then that's good, all right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I haven't talked to her in many, many years.
Right. But you can always say, you know, you definitely toured with her. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
All right, well, speaking of cool things, I wanted to ask you about this because I think this is the coolest thing I think you've done. Way back in the day, you were on Ed McMahon's Star Search. Now, for the young listeners of the podcast world, if you don't know what Star Search is, that's the America's Got Talent of our time when we were young, before America Got Talent came along. Ed McMahon's Star Search was a thing. And you actually beat out legendary comedian Drew Carey. I mean, what do you remember about that? Tell us about it.
Well, it's not so much what I remember, it's what he remembers.
Okay.
And he remembers that. I know what I was like back then. I was a little punk.
Okay.
So I probably did say this to him. He says I did. That he walked out and I went, "Hey, that's a nice suit to lose in."
Oh, you said that to him? Okay. I thought he said that to you. How did he take that from you?
Oh no, you know what was funny was he had already won.
Yeah, he was a defending champion, right? Yeah.
And then I beat him. So he wasn't a champion. I beat him.
Right. But I mean, he was like the week before you. He was the champion from that week, and then
yeah.
So, all right, so you beat him.
And he's a great guy, but I mean, I didn't know him.
Right.
But the stage guys must have really liked Drew, and understandably so. So he must have heard me say that to Drew.
Yeah.
Or Drew went over and told him I was a jerk.
Right.
And Ed McMahon introduces me, and my first TV show ever, and the guy pulls back the curtain, and as I'm walking through the curtain, he looks at me and he goes, "They're gonna fucking hate you."
Oh, jeez.
What he didn't know was, because of growing up in East Boston, there was nothing he could have said that would have relaxed me more than that.
Yeah, you can handle a tough crowd, right?
I laughed so hard as I was walking out because he said that to me that I totally relaxed and I had a great set.
So were you in the green room with Drew? I mean, did you interact with him before or after your set, or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I met him before the show.
Okay, so he was a good guy to you? He treated you well, though?
Oh, Drew is the greatest guy, man.
Okay.
I mean, I did many TV shows with him after that. You know, we did a TV show together in Jamaica, which was Comedy on the Road. I think that was Showtime. And, you know, they filmed like 3 of them. So there were like 30 comics, all at a resort in Jamaica. I had hung out with him after that. But I'm sure, you know.
Oh, it's good to hear he's a good guy.
The reason why I was never on his TV show was because of what I said to him.
Yeah, right. You never forgot it. But, no, some guys change. I had heard years before everything hit with Cosby, I heard Cosby was a prick, and I'm like, it's Cosby, his family dad guy. Man, come to find out, he wasn't the guy we all thought he was. So it's good to hear, you know, Drew Carey didn't.
He was my hero, man.
Yeah, he was everybody. We all grew up listening to those albums. Nobody could believe it. That's why, you know, you don't know who's like, you know, who's the stage good guy and who's like a prick off screen. But good to hear Drew Carey's a good guy. But
he's a great guy.
I mean, when you were doing comedy, you know, starting out and stuff, were there other comics that inspired you and that you looked at and said, "Hey, I want to be like this guy"? Or who were your heroes in comedy?
Well, Bill Cosby,
Well, yeah.
Richard Pryor.
Pryor, yeah.
Um, what else? I'm trying to think. I mean, I couldn't do what he does, what he did. It
Few
was a
could,
totally
yeah.
different style, but I loved Rodney Dangerfield. He was
The
hilarious.
Godfather,
When
yeah.
when I was little, like I was just showing my grandson this the other day. When I was little, my first memory of ever like really laughing hard was at Red Skelton, like an old routine of his called Guzzler's Gin. And I mean that type of the stuff that makes me laugh the hardest
Yeah.
is either someone who does something very, very similar to what I do and they do it really well, or someone who does something that I could never do, you know?
Right.
Like
How did
Red
you do that,
Skelton
right?
was very physical and he was a genius.
Sure, one of the legends of the time, absolutely, yeah.
But like my not so much stand up, but one of the guys I admire more than anybody is Charlie Chaplin.
Oh yeah. Geez, that's going way back there, but yeah, if you're watching the movie about him, he was amazing, yeah.
Well, Chaplin ruined people's careers because he wrote, directed, he composed music for his movies, he acted in them, he came up with all kinds of stuff, and other people, his contemporaries, thought they could do that, so they would fire anybody who didn't agree with them or didn't pursue them the same opportunities that Chaplin got,
Yeah,
and they would try to do what Chaplin did, and they would destroy themselves.
right. It's a dirty business. I mean, few can do what he did. Few can, who wants it the most? It's. I've always
Well,
said there's three sides of comedy. There's the being funny, the political side, and the business side. And you think being funny would come first, but a lot of instances it don't. It's the political side and business side that wins out.
well, now there's the whole, the internet and these people who, they're not even comedians. They're just,
Oh yeah, you used to have
you
to
know,
pack up the house like you did, either move to L.A. or New York if you wanted to make it big time. Now you don't have to do that with the internet anymore. You can
yeah,
you can be in
yeah.
any local town making it happen. But all
It,
right, so
it,
almost 40 years in comedy. I mean, you must have seen a lot in comedy: the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads. You paid your dues. You're doing TV. You're making movies. You're doing the cruise lines, traveling the world. Boom! This pandemic hits. How's that affected you?
uh, it's just my whole life is on hold. I mean, if you think of just just me, just someone who does what I do, the
Right?
things that I used to use, which were rent a cars, airlines, hotels, and cruise ships, like all of that stuff is gone.
Now, in 40
Eh,
years, have you ever seen anything like it? I mean, I know in the 80s they
No,
had the comedy boom, and then it kind of fizzled out after that. It was a tough time for comedy. But I mean, have you ever seen anything hit comedy like this before?
no,
No.
no, nothing, nothing. I mean, there's nowhere to go. And
Yeah.
I've had people. I mean, I'm going into depression over this now. Like I literally
Oh,
just
everybody, yeah. It
came
was their
home from
life.
a doctor's appointment. Like I think I'm getting depressed
Yeah.
because they're like, well, what did you do for? And I don't even know if you and I have ever worked together. Why have we worked together? I think we have.
I think I seen you once actually. The restaurant I work at, we donate money to the local fire chiefs and stuff here in Leominster. And I think I seen you once at a Sheraton hotel. They were doing a big fire fund thing. I believe you were headlining the show that night.
Oh, that was probably for Fred Smirlis' company.
It could have been, yeah. It was the
Yeah.
what All Stars? It called the All Star lineup. It was like all
Also,
headliners,
also,
yeah.
yeah. And but I work. Whatever's on my mind is what comes out. Whatever
Right.
happened to me that day, whatever I'm going through. When I was going through divorces, my whole set was about divorces. And when there was a war, everything I did was
Yeah.
about the war. And the hardest thing for me to deal with before this was politics because I'd never been into politics. You know,
It's
I
a
got really
sensitive
involved.
subject on stage, yeah. Well, you can turn a crowd real quick with politics. Yeah, that's a tough one to
Oh
do.
man, I've had people literally get up during my show and go outside and have a
Oh
fist
yeah,
fight.
oh yeah.
Like that's happened to me. Like I've watched people get up and go outside and
I
fight.
had a guy flip
You
me
know?
off once and walk out. He was so pissed. I was like, okay, easy with the politic jokes here to back off. But I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
comedy's like therapeutic for you, and now that you can't do it anymore, that takes away your therapy, right? Because you can't talk about your daily
yeah.
stuff, on stage anymore.
Yeah, and people are like, well, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? And I'm like, there's no substitute for this.
Yeah,
There's nothing that comes close. You know that we could do Zoom shows. You, yeah, I could do Zoom shows if I wanted to do it and to maybe earn some money.
right.
But the healing that it does when you get up on that stage and the endorphins and
Yeah,
the
having the
release.
crowd right on top of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they
So
got the theater shows too, where you stand, they sit in their cars, and you're on a stage like hundreds of feet from them. Then, if you say something funny, they beep their horns, and that's considered a laugh. And it's like, but you're taking so much away from the art doing that. I think.
oh yeah. Well, first of all, your jokes are timed around the laughter.
Right.
So learning how to change your timing is
It's a whole new game, that's for sure. But
yeah.
now what do you think? I mean, well, once like someday it'll get back to normal. I mean, how long do you think it's going to take before we're back to doing what we love to do? I mean, what do you think? What do you
Well,
think the future of comedy is?
well, this is the thing. I mean, the government has completely dropped the ball on fixing this, and I mean, we should be right now. We should already be close to 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 conquering this thing,
Right.
and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. So, in my estimation, it's not even going to start getting better for a year.
At least a year, yeah. All my rooms are down. I mean, I book a lot of rooms. I can't. I mean, 10 people inside and 25 outside. What can you? That's not a show. What can you do with that? I mean, until they change the laws, there's nothing we can do. No live
Yeah.
entertainment. Whereas,
Well, nobody believed me when this first hit because working on cruise ships, I'm really, used to watching people deal with the virus.
yeah,
And like you said, these ships are like little cities. So when this first hit, people like, oh, you think we're going to be done by Easter? It's like not a chance. And they're like, oh no, it won't last more than 3 or 4 months, will it? And I'm like, yes,
yeah,
it's going
probably
to.
will. Yeah.
And people are complaining like, oh, they're just saying everybody who's dying is dying of COVID. They're making up these numbers. And it's like, no, there's a lot more than what these numbers are reflecting.
Right.
Like, no, that's impossible. I'm like, I'm telling you, just from that little world on a ship, knowing that for every case you know about, there's 10 more that
That you don't know about, right?
So and everybody wants to argue about they're just saying that people have it so they get all this money. Well, all you have to do is go back and see how many Americans died in 2019 and how many died in 2020. And there's a hell of a lot more in 2020,
Right. We can't even get a timetable. Did you see Dangerfield's had to close up? They can't even get a timetable on when they're going to reopen because nobody knows.
Oh, dude, no, Dangerfield's is done from what I
Yeah,
heard.
that's a legendary club, and then the city wouldn't even give them a time estimate on when they could reopen. It's like, we don't know. Like, how do you
My
deal
niece,
with that?
Nicole, same last name as me, Nicole Yannetty, she's an actress and improviser. She had just made it to like the top of a famous improv group in New York. Oh my God, why can't I think of the name of it? This is terrible.
You're on the spot.
Upright Citizens Brigade.
Okay.
The UCB. She was finally like doing their real shows, and she's amazing and she's hilarious, and was such an institution in New York. and it's
It's
gone.
gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
And we don't know when we're going to get it back. That's the sad part, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, you've had a legendary career. We talked about how you get started, what you've done. I mean, if there's anything left in comedy you'd like to do, is there anything, that's on your bucket list before you go you'd like to accomplish in comedy, or is it just get back to doing what you love to do? What is it for you?
Now I'm gonna open my own club.
Open your own club?
Yeah, I want to open a club up here in New
There you
Hampshire.
go. Then that's the business side. That's the tough side right there of comedy. Making them laugh, so that's the fun part. But they don't get the business side's the tough part of it. But that's all a part of the business. Yeah.
Well, I want my own place. I wanna be able to call the shots. I want to be able to treat comedians the way I think they should be treated. And I think this is a great place to have a club. There's no clubs around here,
Right.
full-time clubs, and obviously I'm not going to open it now.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
now.
I'm gonna wait till we're back to normal, right?
Yeah, but I will. I'll get my club.
You get your
And
club someday.
everyone's like, "Oh, you're gonna be married to this place," and I'm like, "You mean I'm gonna be forced to spend my life in the place I love to be more
Doing
than
what
any
you
other
love
place?"
to do. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I want to stay home. I got a great
Yeah.
family. I love where I live. I love New Hampshire,
Yeah.
and I live in a great neighborhood. I live on a beautiful lake, and where do you live in?
I'm in Central Mass. I'm in Gardner, a little town named Gardner.
Yeah, Apple
Oh.
Country.
Yeah, we're out here. Out here in the we get the big chair, not much else. All right, I'll give you my final question. We've been here about an hour. I mean, you're doing all these shows. Who's the next young up and coming comic that you think that really caught your eye? We should keep an eye on. Who's the future of comedy? Do you think?
There's a lot of guys that I really like,
No.
and but there's no one. I guess I'm not in that world of like, because it's different now. Like when I started, the guys that were very established guys would go to open mic nights and perform, and they would meet the younger comics, and now it's like if I go to work during the week, there's nowhere to go. Like, I'm gonna go to this place, and I don't mean because of the pandemic. Before all this happened,
Yeah.
there's no place for me to go where there's a decent audience and I can meet younger comedians and watch them kind of grow. It's another reason why I want to open my own club. I want to
Pass on what you learn, right?
No one's really focusing on cultivating new young talent.
Right.
Rick Jenkins.
Rick Jenkins, I was just gonna say, you took the words out of my mouth. He's the guy, right?
Yeah, Rick Jenkins really, like, everything I see with Rick Jenkins is him doing stuff with younger, and I don't mean younger like just in age,
Yeah.
just people who haven't been in the business that long and starting out, and he gives them chances. He's really creative with the shows, or letting them be creative with creating shows.
Right.
So Mike Clark, he's had comedy classes and some stuff at Giggles, and Mike has really been helping out some newer people. Laugh Boston, they got some open mic nights and they do some
Tony
stuff.
V's room, right? Yeah.
Not like, I mean, every comedy club I started at had at least one open mic night every
Right.
week.
All right, so we'll give you the opportunity here. We get a lot of young comics that tune in Funny Like Clown podcast. If you had some advice for a young comic, I mean, with all your years in comedy, what advice would you give them to right now? If they want to make it in business.
Have fun.
Have fun. That's it.
That's have fun. That's the best advice I ever got, and it will help you more than anything else. If you're having fun, the audience will have fun watching you have fun, and enjoy it, especially when you're first starting out and it's not your full-time job, and you don't need it to make a living. You're just doing it because you love it.
Just for the fun of it. That's the most fun you have in comedy. You don't even realize it at the time.
Yeah, So, I mean, there's nothing better. I can't think of anything better than having a great set as a stand-up comedian. There's nothing better.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't, in all of show business, I can't think of anything that must, and I mean just in that moment,
Yeah, such a high you can't match it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I appreciate you doing the podcast, Joe, and I hope this pandemic gets over and we can all get back to having fun soon. And I hope to see you on the scene soon.
Hey, thanks so much, Dennis. I look
right.
forward to seeing you anywhere.
Anywhere we can go from here on out. We'll be back
Yeah.
someday, brother. Thanks
Thanks,
again
bro.
for calling in, all right?
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Joe Yannetty, legendary career right there, man. What can you say? Sailed the seven seas, played some of the biggest places there is to play in comedy, and 40 years, seen it all, and we all just want to get back to having fun. So no matter what you do in life, remember to have fun doing it. That's great advice. This is Funny Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. We got the legends coming on. Stay tuned. Next week we got Eddie Brill, and from the David Letterman Show, one legend after another, and hey, we're doing comedy. We're learning things. I'm having fun. Hope you're having fun with me. Keep laughing, folks. Till next week. Good night.